Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate having this hearing. I'd like to begin my testimony with some testimony that I received from a worker, a nursing assistant named Veronica Tisch. Veronica has worked at St. Vincent Medical Center in Los Angeles since 1981. She tells the story how she and her co-workers organized. Excuse me. On January 5th, Veronica and her co-workers filed a petition for an election with the NLRB. The election was scheduled for February 18th, 2000. Veronica shared that with her employer, and very quickly began an anti-union campaign and subcontracted out some of the work in her bargaining unit just days before the union election to prevent employees from voting in the election in violation of the NLRA law. Ultimately, the NLRB found that St. Vincent's had violated the federal law, but only in 2007, more than after 6 years of litigation. Despite this ruling, the hospital continued its campaign. It was only of June of this year, 11 years after the petition for the election was filed, that Veronica and her co-workers were able to unionize. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit Veronica's statement for the record.
Without objection.
I'd like to say something. It just seems to me, I've been on this committee 15 years now, and for 15 years, I have heard this committee constantly going after union members. I've been from a union family. My father worked very hard, and he died very young because of complications from the work, asbestos. My brothers in the union, both one retired, younger than me, the other one certainly about ready to retire because the work that they did basically broke them physically. I happen to think that, and as a nurse I will say that we got unionized later in my years. I will say to you that the men and women of this country, the middle income families of this country, is what made this country great. And it just seems that everybody is going after them, mainly because the economy is not well. Let me say to all of you in the audience, you had nothing to do with the economy failing. All you're doing is actually adding to the economy because you're the ones that are going shopping. You're the ones that are buying foods. So basically, for what I'm saying is, you can dislike the unions. Maybe it's because you don't like to see middle class move up. That one I've never been able to figure out. What I want to follow to, certainly to Professor Schmidt, you've heard a lot of accusations here, and I noticed that you've been writing a lot of things down. And I noticed that you had your hand raised a couple of times because you wanted to ask some questions. Please take my time and answer any questions that you feel were not answered correctly or you did not have the time to answer them. But I have to say, when it takes 12 years to try to get a place unionized, something is wrong, and it's certainly not leaning towards making our unions stronger.
I'll tell you, actually, I do have a note here of something I want to get to, but we've heard a lot of personal stories, and I'll give you my personal story to a certain extent. I'm at the point in my life where I have 3 kids who are graduating from college and law school and looking for jobs. And as a taxpayer, I would much rather see this committee looking at ways to stimulate the economy and provide jobs for those kids rather than micromanaging the board. I can't believe you're engaged in this, especially when the board has been responsible in its rulemaking process. Now, one other thing that I have been waiting to comment on is past Chair Chomber, I thought, made the one attempt at kind of bipartisanship here, and I wanted to acknowledge that. He worked with Chairman Liebman, and he acknowledged that during the time they worked together, she was an excellent colleague, and in fact, they had high levels of agreement. And in fact, I used to joke with my students when they had the 2-person board, I used to joke, maybe we should always have a 2-person board, because the fact of the matter is it worked pretty well when just the 2 of you were on the board, didn't it? And what the relevance of that is, as an academic, I get to follow these people in their careers. I hear them at conferences, I hear them give presentations, I read their opinions, and I'd like to say both of them are very knowledgeable about the law and very, very reasonable people. And the idea that Chairman Liebman here is off on some wild goose chase, she's actually being a very responsible civil servant and with the board, trying to promulgate new rules that'll make our procedures more efficient and more fair. And I think that should be commended rather than attacked.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wilson.